everything that I've done in my career has felt like relatively easy. And so I just never understood why I couldn't find more A players because everything was so easy, right? And of course, you stumble across A players, and I had it in the old insurance agencies. And what I found is they would stick around for a while, but oftentimes A players aren't going to stick around because they're going to go be the boss somewhere else or start their own thing. Um, I became very terrified of the law of the lid. Are you familiar with that?
Not.
Okay. So it's from John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What is up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you are listening to another wonderful episode of the Painter Growth Podcast, this time with repeat offender, Mr. Brad Ellison. What's up, man?
Hey, Mike. How you doing, buddy?
I am much better now that I'm talking to you.
Yeah. How many times have you had Nick Slavic on the show?
I think 3.
So, and this is my third?
I think this is 3, so I think you're tying him.
I want to be fourth before he's fourth.
Okay, well, let's do it. I think Jason Paris is also 3.
Okay.
He's got a pull, though. But anyway, so lots going on in life. You're in spring in your painting business. You got your marketing company that you just launched, and like you're a busy man, right? Mm-hmm. That leads right into the topic that I want to talk about today. That's very near and dear to my heart. I think it's very valuable for painting businesses and entrepreneurs of all level, and that's the concept of leading through leaders and having A players basically do so much for you that if you've never had an A player before, you can't even imagine what they're actually capable of doing. So I guess just starting off, Brad, what has your experience been hiring management position? Horror stories, great stories, like what's that been like for you?
So I have a pretty long career before I entered the painting world, and I've hired a lot of people, a lot of salespeople, managers, etc. And I always struggled with finding those A players because, well, I never understood why. Everything always felt really easy for me, right? Like it's easy to sell life insurance. It was easy to sell paint jobs. Everything that I've done in my career has felt like relatively easy. And so I just never understood why I couldn't find more A players because everything was so easy, right? And of course, you stumble across A players, and I had it in the old insurance agencies. And what I found is they would stick around for a while, but oftentimes A players aren't going to stick around because they're going to go be the boss somewhere else or start their own thing. I became very terrified of the law of the lid. Are you familiar with that?
Not.
Okay. So it's from John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It might even be like number 1, but certainly number 1 in my brain. The law of the lid basically explains that you will never be able to lead people higher than your level. So if you are a 5, you will never be able to retain 6s or higher. Now, if you're a 7, that gives you a lot of people underneath you that, 1s through 6s that you can actively train and manage and retain. But you'll never find the 8s, 9s, and 10s. And I got really scared at that point because maybe I'm a 5, maybe I'm a 4, maybe I'm a 7, maybe. But the law of the lid really terrified me for a long time. It wasn't until pretty recently that I kind of identified my biggest issue and all of that and how it was really all my fault, and then effectively brought other people on that could lead with me. And that's, of course, talking about my partner, Tim. Tim is now co-owner of Ellison Painting. He owns 30%. And he's effectively leading all of Ellison Painting. I could be hands off. I could die tomorrow and Ellison Painting will continue under his leadership. So that's been really satisfying, but that's been the only real example that I can point to that say, all right, this is a true A player that I have brought on board and will stick around.
Let's just start by describing the difference between an A player and even a B player. How would you define the difference?
I think an A player is someone that maybe needs to know the general guidelines in which they're expected to operate, maybe the goals, the endpoint, and then an A player is going to find their way to that endpoint one way or another through natural skill or previous training or just a general insatiable desire to win or complete a task. That to me is an A player that doesn't need much guidance, doesn't need much coaching. They need a framework in which to operate, and they are going to succeed.
And direction to go.
Sure. Yeah, that's the end point, right?
Yeah.
A B player, most of our companies are made of B players, and B players are phenomenal. B players are the ones that are going to stick around for a really long time because they like the comfort and security of a good job. But they don't need just the framework in which they're expected to operate. They need the full SOPs and playbooks, and then active management, active accountability, check-ins on, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Which I was always really bad at. Again, I don't think it's arrogant for me to say, hey, I am an A player. And if you give me the goal, what you want me to do, I'm going to figure out how to do it, because that comes naturally to me. And I've been really bad at managing people who aren't also A players.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are inherently A players because they are more, inherently, what's it, like, internally motivated and externally motivated. So they both want that, like, they both have that internal motivation to be able to do hard things and see them through to the finish line. Whereas B players are typically more employee based. And so that's, I think, maybe why it's hard to find those A players who are also wanting to be employees.
I think there's a certain amount of ego to it as well. And I have this conversation all the time when I'm interviewing possible clients for rollout marketing. With entrepreneurship, there's a healthy amount of ego that's necessary, right? At some point, you and I and anyone that owns their business that's listening to this said to themselves, I think I can do this better on my own, right? And that's healthy. What's unhealthy is not being coachable or thinking you are way better than everyone else and you don't need to learn anything else. That's where, businesses like Painter Growth and Rollout can help in coaching, right? We can help coach them around the things that they're not strong at, but they got to have a healthy amount of
ego. You've had business coaching. I've had business coaching. Ego's not a bad thing if it's checked.
Yeah, for sure. The biggest difference maker for us at Ellison was when we brought Tim on board. Tim and I had worked together for a couple of years at another marketing agency about 12 years ago. And I've known him since he was 13. So we've had a personal relationship. We knew how to work together, and we both liked each other. But there was still some all right, who should be in charge of what? Where are Brad's strengths? Where are Tim's strengths? Where do they overlap? Where do they not overlap? We can fill in the gaps. And when he started, I was still actively running Ellison Painting, leading the meetings, managing the people. And we discovered that a lot of people were going around me to ask him questions. They even sales guys. He was in charge of production. I was in charge of sales. And the sales guys were reaching out to him or reaching out to other salespeople rather than reaching out to me. I guess there was a perception that I was impatient or annoyed, and certainly wasn't trying to portray that. If someone calls and asks for help with a proposal or a difficult client, I was happy to do it. But I think that mentality of, come on, this is so easy, why do you need this help, was being portrayed inadvertently. And so in the discussions with Tim, everyone loves Tim. He's just a good guy. He's a likable guy. His people skills are at a deeper level are way better than mine. On a surface level, maybe mine are better. Maybe that's why I can sell so many paint jobs, because I can make a good first impression, build trust, build rapport, and then move on. But
as long as they don't have to spend much time with you.
Correct. At the end of the day, for my team members, they needed that deep interpersonal connection and trust. And so Tim and I came to the realization that I love interacting with other A players, high performers, which is why, when we're at these painting conferences, I love spending time with guys like you and Jason Paris, and just a really smart, motivated people. Like the conversations you and I and Brandon Vaughn had at PaintCon in San Diego. That stuff entered. I love being surrounded by freaking killers, A players, highly motivated, autonomous individuals. And it's really hard for me to actively manage B players. But Tim's great at it. And once we came to that realization that I am a leader of leaders, but I'm not a leader of non-leaders, and handed that all over to Tim. Now, the only person I actively manage is Tim, and he needs very little management. So then our conversations are less about, hey, Tim, I need you to do this and not that. It's all about strategy, tactics, and how we're going to implement them.
Yeah, from a high level, I mean, if you never had that realization, you could have just like struggled for like months or years feeling like you're just a bad manager because you're not able to have that connection. But the fact that you were able to have that kind of foresight or insight into your preferences, that allowed you to get into your like zone of genius.
Yeah.
And get you to your point.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So I had a question written down that I was going to ask, but actually I think the question has changed, because the question I was going to say is like, how did you go from that 7 that you called yourself, self-purported 7, to a 10, but you didn't necessarily do that. It sounds like you just shifted what you were doing. You might still be a 7 when it comes to like that management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say active management of people, maybe I'm a 7, and maybe that's even a little generous. I don't know. And I don't want to like keep crapping on myself. I think, well, I know that I have good intentions with my employees, but apparently I'm bad with the implementation of that. I think that the biggest benefit to having Tim on board as a true A player, as a true leader of people, is that it does free me up to do all the things that are going to be far more beneficial to our business long term, which is being the face of rollout marketing, only interacting with the customers that I want to interact with, only selling the jobs to the people that I want to sell jobs to, spending more time on the long-term strategies, tactics that will push Ellison Painting and rollout marketing forward, rather than the day-to-day minutia that comes with management.
It sounds like you and Tim kind of have like the traditional visionary integrator relationship.
100%. But I think that we both have, I have a lot of integrator strengths and he has a lot of visionary strengths, but where our natural tendencies fall, we've both leaned into that. And to Tim's credit, Tim could have an enormous ego. He's very handsome. He's tall, which I guess people are attracted to. I don't know. He's a phenomenal athlete. He was the captain of the University of Michigan soccer team while he was there. He also won some award that I joke was like the best person in the world award. It was like whatever, the humanitarian best sport. I don't know. He has so many things that he could have this huge ego about. And to his credit, he's really deferred back to me. And he said, all right, you are the leader here. You are the leader of this company. And I'm going to take all this off your plate so that you can do the things that are going to be the most beneficial to us. He and I haven't talked about the difficulty in that, but I wonder if that's hard for him, or maybe just because he's a good guy, it's easy and natural. I don't know.
I mean, I think that would have to be, you'd have to dig into more as like his motivations and his desires and his risk tolerance, because none of that has anything to do with personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he just has a lower risk tolerance than you, then being a 30% owner of a business that's already successful is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because when I was launching Ellison Painting, and even when I was running the old company, he and I were friends, and we would connect every few months, and I would say, not right now, but someday in the future, I think you need to come partner with me. He's like, I don't think so. He had some fancy corporate consulting job. He was traveling all over the country, leading seminars for Fortune 500 companies. And, did he want to slum it in the painting world? Probably not. But at the end of 2023, we had just hit $3 million in sales for that year. And I reached out again and I said, hey, I think the time might be getting closer. And to my surprise, he said, I think the timing is closer than I ever thought it would be. His son was 3 months old. That was his first child. And he was realizing the wear and tear on his family of him being in and out of town all the time. But then because of his aversion to risk, like he wouldn't have started a painting company with me, but we were at $3 million a year. So I have a proof of concept. We had money to work with. We were big enough that it didn't feel like a huge risk, but we weren't too big that it was now huge financial buy-in, right? So it was like right at the right time that we were able to catch that partnership. He came in right at the right time.
Now, have you ever had an interview with an A player? And this is I think important for everyone to think about. Like if you're trying to identify, like, am I talking to an A player? When you're sitting down for an interview, they should intimidate you. Like you should feel like this person is too good to work for me. And if you ever feel that is an internal indication that, for me at least, that I should try to recruit this person. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, when I used to go on interviews, I would take my shirt off and flex to intimidate them. I never got the job. Maybe it wasn't a great tactic.
Oh, when you were on the other side.
When I was trying to get a job.
Yeah, I don't think you were fit then, were you?
No. And then really, even now when I take my shirt off, they're like, "Oh, you got cute little muscles, but you're still like 5 feet tall." No, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't really thought about that. I have had the thought when I've interviewed people in the past, even if I hired this guy, he's probably not going to stay with me for very long, right? Because if someone's a killer, you expect them to maybe not stick around for a while. They should always be looking for the new opportunity.
And you should always be sharpening your pencil to be the best opportunity.
Correct. That's exactly it. And that's what I was just about to say. I had this conversation at church this past week where a lot of companies shy away from hiring A players because of that. Like, yeah, I don't want to hire them. They probably won't stick around for a while, or maybe they're just so intimidated they won't do it. You want to hire the types of people that other companies are going to want to hire. You want to hire the types of people that may desire to move on to a bigger and better opportunity. And then it's up to us as business owners to incentivize them to stay. You say sharpen the pencil, whatever it may be, whatever motivates them, you got to figure out what that is and have your company be the best opportunity. And that's also how we approach our subcontractors is we say, listen, you got your business and we have our business. And if you end up finding some jobs on your own, or you find another contractor that you want to sub from, you think is a better fit, I will never make you feel bad about that. You got to do what's best for your business. My goal is to make this opportunity so easy and so profitable that you'll never want to do that. But that's going to be my job, not yours.
Yep.
And I think that's resonated. Well, I know it's resonated because our subs do stick around and they like working with us.
One thing that I heard that Alex Hormozy told us when we were at his headquarters in November is that to keep A players, you need to make your vision and your dreams so big that their dreams can fit inside your dream. Have you heard that one before?
I have heard that.
Yeah, to make your vision, to make your dreams so big that their dreams can fit inside of it.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I think maybe that's why the relationship with Tim worked, because I wasn't saying, all right, I want to be a $5 million paint company. It's like, no. We want to be a $20 million paint company in Detroit. And then we want to have 10 locations around the Midwest that are each doing at least $2 million. And we want to launch our marketing agency and scale that up to 300 or 400 clients. And then we want to acquire businesses around the country. Like, it's a pretty big dream that plenty of room for Tim to, whatever his dream was at the time, to fit inside there. And his dream is probably more modest than mine. We actually had a conversation. I asked him, like, at what dollar amount would someone have to offer us to actually accept to sell Ellison Painting and walk away? And mine was like $50 million. Give me $50 million. I'll take my 70%. I'll take my 35 million and I'll be done. His was like, he needed like 3 million. Like 3 million, 6% interest. I can live off $180,000. So maybe it's good that as the visionary, my dream is way higher than his, but he's latched on to the vision, and it aligns exactly with what he wants to do with the business as well.
Yeah. And that's important, having that size of a vision, because my guess is that there's room in your business for even more people like Tim at that level.
Well, there better be. I mean, when we launch Ellison Roofing, I need a Tim. And when we launch nationwide locations, I'm going to need another Tim to run that. I don't want to do it. I can't do it. Right.
No.
So yeah, we're going to need to find more A players, but we're building an organization that should attract that. And really what we're doing, we're copying a version of what Jason Paris did with Paris Painting. And then Olive Holdings is they have a whole team of Brad and Tims, and they each have their own. Yeah, they're so smart. They're so good. And each of them has their own little niche and specialty. That's a long-term for us. I have a question. Do you think you can recruit a Tim without him actually being a partner long-term?
That's a good question, because we're actually currently recruiting a very high level person. And I got to keep details super light, but basically when you're looking at recruiting a high level person, there's 3 levers that you have to play with. You have salary, you have bonus/profit sharing, and then as the third, you have equity. Mm-hmm. And she said a number, or like basically I said a number, and it's like, okay, well, in order to get to that number, we're gonna have to figure out a combination of all 3. Mm-hmm. So Jesse and I have been working on different, creative ways to like hit the number that she's looking for. And it's fun to do those types of, exercises. Like these are the $1 million moves or the $5 million moves, bringing on people like this and playing in this, like such a high level in your business. We're not in the business. We're not even working on the business. Like these are the types of moves where you're actually working over top of the business. Mm-hmm. And placing executives and key leaders, and dealing with equity and, handing it out or using it as bargaining chips. Like it's a really cool position to be able to, make moves like that. So to answer your question, is it possible to retain someone like that? I think yes, but there needs to be an outsized return in terms of profit sharing that they would not otherwise get through, because they're not getting equity. So you'd have to pay them short term a lot more. So it's going to hurt the P&L more. But if you know that your long-term goal is an exit and you don't want to give up any of your equity, then, I think it's possible. It's just, I
think it's much more difficult on the painting side than maybe on the marketing side, because realistically, most painting companies are not going to have an exit event, a big payout event. And most companies, by the time you're talking about bringing on that A player, I don't know that there's enough revenue to really pay someone. Like all these big corporations have a ton of A players that don't have any real ownership in the business, but they have the money to compensate them, appropriately. I can't afford to pay Tim $500,000 or $600,000 a year, but I could afford to sell him some equity and pay him a healthy salary. And as long as the business is profitable, then he'll make his money off the ownership piece too.
Yeah. I mean, one nice, the cool thing about deal structure is that there's infinite ways to structure a deal if you're going to be involving equity. And one cool concept that people can use and play with if they have someone they're looking at potentially bringing on, if you want to hire someone as a COO or integrator or general manager, I wouldn't recommend doing equity for like a sales rep or a production manager. Mm-hmm. But if they're looking at general manager or COO or integrator type role, then I think it opens it up. But the idea of like a 3 or 4 year vesting period with a like a 2-year cliff, something like that. So say they're going to vest 20% over 4 years, but which is like 5% a year, but if they leave before the first 2 years, then they get nothing. And so I think if you have an A player on your team or you're thinking about bringing somebody on, educating yourself on deal structure a little bit so that you can at least know what's out there and know what bargaining chips you have, that will really make things a lot easier for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So in your scenario, this potential partner would earn equity over time, whereas Tim is purchasing equity.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it would be part of a bonus structure where if they hit KPIs, then they get this, or this. Yeah. And then every quarter, every year, they would earn a certain amount of it up to a certain percent over the 4-year period.
Yeah, that's great. that negotiation that Tim and I went through was actually a lot of fun. We found ourselves arguing for the other person. I phrased it like, all right, I want to make sure that if evil Brad eventually shows his face, that he's not allowed to totally screw over Tim. And then he started doing the exact opposite. Just, all right, you need to think about this and protect yourself that way. I wanted to sell 20% of the company. He wanted 40%. And so we even negotiated there. So I said, all right, tell you what, I'll sell you 30%, but the first 20%, I'll concede that you can buy it off the valuation at the end of 2023. If you want another 10%, then we're going to base it on the valuation at the end of 2024. So you'll get your 30%. You'll get the first 20% at really what will be a bargain.
Yeah.
And the second 10% probably hurt a little bit more to purchase. And he agreed. And actually that turned out to be the case. He paid more for the 10% than he did on the 20.
Yep, for sure it would. That's a cool way to do it. How did you guys deal with like capital gains and tax from that?
I still don't know what any of these words mean. I don't know. I just tell my accountant where the money came from and where it went. And he says, all right, you owe this much.
Okay. Yeah. Cause there's definitely right and wrong ways to do this.
Yeah.
And so we're, for Jesse, who is buying in this year, 20%, we're just like, if you're dealing in the like hundreds of thousands of dollars of share value, we're just trying to make sure that we don't get hit with like a 30% capital gains tax on that. Like if you have $500,000, paper gain, and now you have to pay a real tax bill on that, like that can hurt a lot.
Yeah. We consulted with tax attorney beforehand, before we
100%.
drafted everything. Yeah.
So back to recruiting A players. Now, I think most people here, they're going to be like listening, they're going to be more in the position where an A player that they're going to get is going to be either at this level, a sales rep or a production manager, right? You mentioned something about retention and keeping them around. So like what goes on in your mind when you think about like bringing on a production manager, or maybe the difference between an A player and a B player in that production manager role?
So as far as keeping them around, we do start with compensation, and I don't think we overpay our project managers, but we compensate them pretty well for the work they're doing. And most of the people that come on board as project managers, this is the highest compensation that they could command relative to other roles in other companies. So that's the first piece is the compensation. And then we also want to paint, what the future might look like. Now, the project management role at its face probably doesn't have a lot of upward mobility. Sales is a different game, right? You sell $1 million this year and you sell $2 million next year, you're probably going to make more than twice next year what you made this year. Well, it's pretty hard to manage twice as many projects next year as you did this year. So the long-term growth options would be around the other ventures in and around Ellison Painting, right? So it could be an opportunity to help launch a branch in a different major metropolitan area. Well, our PMs generally are younger and a little bit more mobile and maybe more open to moving. So there's opportunities there, but some roles just don't have a lot of upward mobility in general. And we've had that conversation. Like, we want good people to work as our project managers. We want to have a good system in which good people can operate at a high level. But a project manager is $80,000 to $90,000 role.
Yeah.
It's not a $200,000 role. It just never will be. Sales might be a $200,000 role because those are harder to find. Really, really good salespeople are harder to find and harder to keep, and you gotta compensate them justly. I don't know. Is that
yeah? So I mean, I guess what's coming for me is like that project manager role. You almost need like a B+ or an A-. Like, you don't need a true A player, full independent thinker in that role. You need someone who's really good at like executing, following systems, making sure there's no loose ends. Mm-hmm. So that, I mean, there can be an A player in that that type of level, but you're not looking for a free spirit.
You want someone that values stability and predictability. There are obviously some components of project management that are unpredictable, but the pay is going to be a lot more steady. Our project management compensation plan comes with a monthly base pay plus commission plus benefits. Our sales plan, our sales comp plan, it's 100% commission. So there's going to be a lot more variance in their pay.
Your
Project manager,
your sales guys are 1099s then?
no, they're all employees.
Okay.
Still.
Straight
Yep.
100% commission as an employee?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. The rules are they have to meet a certain minimum income requirement over the span of the time they're working for you. But they're obviously making more than minimum wage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's more variation, whereas a project manager, it's even when we're slower in the winter, they're making their money. And that's not the role for me, right? Give me all the variation because I want to be able to make $30,000 in a month, not limited to $6,000.
Yeah.
But those are different strokes for different folks, different types of people for different roles.
Yeah. I mean, we started out this conversation, which was like leading through others, right? And then we kind of went into Tim and
partnerships
partnerships and stuff. But if you go back to this like whole concept of leading through others, I think I feel the same feelings as you do towards management. I feel like I'm a good leader, but I'm not a very good manager. I'm not good at following up with scorecards, relaying KPIs, holding people accountable. I'm a lot better having these like bigger discussions, having like, talking to someone about the strategic direction of their role.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, what did you accomplish last week? What are you going to accomplish this week?
Yep. I think people get fired up and they rally around my vision for the business, and they are energized regularly by Tim's management. So Tim leads our weekly meetings, but then when we have our quarterly meetings, I lead those because those are bigger picture vision meetings. The other interesting thing I've noticed since Tim took over the active management role, if we're talking about leading through leaders, I have a way better relationship with all the people that work at Ellison Painting. Now they feel a lot more comfortable coming to me and say, hey, I got this customer and he asked me this. I don't really know the best way to respond. Now they are coming to me instead of Tim for those types of things because they're probably not so beat down on the day-to-day interaction of working for Brad.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. Definitely. So, I mean, for me, what I have tried to do in the past and in Painter Growth as well is I'm really good quick start, but I'm not a very good follow through.
Oh.
So I'll start a project, and then what I'll do is I'll hire someone or put someone on my team to follow through with that project.
Yes.
Do you ever do anything like that?
That's me to a T, man. I've got so many ideas and I can get everything started, and I can get it started more quickly than anyone, but it will die on a shelf if someone else isn't equipped to pick it up and run with it.
Yeah. But I feel like that's okay. As long as you are the type of person who can find, empower, communicate, and get someone having momentum on that project. And then what they need to do is they need to come back to me and tell me the progress because I'm not going to ask them. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where you need that A player to take imperfect instruction and run with it and execute on your vision.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely value all the people that work for me that can be assigned a task or handed off a project, and I never have to think about it again because I know it's going to get done. Right. When I find out that it didn't get done, that's what is really frustrating for me, that I have a hard time dealing with that.
I think there's also there's a thing in business, I think, where you need to hire people before you're ready for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't do that, and then they never end up making that hire, and that's why they get stuck.
Yeah, well, people make that same decision around everything. Hiring a business coach, they want to wait till they can afford it. They wait to do marketing or increase their marketing spend until they can afford it, and then at that point, it's too late, and you've missed a ton of opportunity. And so we live and die by that idea where we invest in the business long before we can actually justify the expense. We just hired our third salesperson. We don't even have enough leads to keep 2 guys fully busy right now, but I'm going to eat it. I'm going to pay for the guy, and it's going to be worth it. We hired another project manager. We are producing $150,000 a month in jobs right now. That's not even one full-time project manager, but now we got two, plus Tim. We just hired a second project coordinator. We don't need two people to coordinate these jobs, but we will. We believe that we will. And so we really invest heavily this time of year. And I go through the same cycle every year where I look at our P&L. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're down 90 grand on the year so far. We're in the red. Why am I in this business? I'm going to lose my house. Rachel's going to leave me, and I'm a failure. But then, of course, we keep moving forward in faith. March rolls around, sales start picking up. April, May, now we're painting outside, and we're back in the black. And now we get to reap the rewards of the investment we made, even when it didn't look on paper like we should do it.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Yeah, I'll wait till I save up a little more money before I hire a coach, or I'm going to wait until I get in a bit better shape before I join the gym.
Mm-hmm. Well, I talk to people all the time, and they say, when's an ideal time frame for onboarding? When do you want to start generating leads? Well, we're going to wait. I think we need to wait till we start doing some outside jobs and have some money. So I'm thinking maybe July. I'm like, if you wait until July to start marketing for exterior jobs, you might as well wait until next January, because you will have already missed the boat.
Yeah.
But whatever.
I think what you said earlier
will benefit by from other people's ignorance or dragging their feet.
Yeah. I mean, what you said earlier about being optimistic as an entrepreneur, you need to be chronically optimistic. Because if you're a pessimistic business owner, you're always going to look for why things aren't going to work. Like for you, it's like, oh, we had a really slow January and February, and now like what if I turn on Facebook ads, or what if I crank up Facebook ads and I don't get an ROI? It's like, okay, well, what if you do? Mm-hmm. Right? You can't look at the glass half empty as an entrepreneur. You need to be cautiously optimistic, but you need to be pretty chronically optimistic.
It goes back to that healthy sense of ego that I mentioned earlier. You need to believe that it's true, but what is it based on? Well, it's based on history. It's based on data. I've seen it now. This is my 8th year in the industry. I know that if you invest something here, you're going to see this type of payout. Hire someone here, here's where it's going to pay off. So it is optimism, but it's also strategic planning. Yeah, I believe it's going to work, and here's how I'm going to make sure that it has the best chance to work.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just blind optimism, which I think some people would rightfully scoff at. But it's realistic optimism. It's informed optimism.
Mm-hmm. It's also being aware of the data and being able to rationalize it, right? There's going to be the emotional reason why you want it to work, but you also need the logical reason of why it's going to work too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people aren't I like to say data enabled, right? Seeing your metrics. So in the marketing example, if you're running Facebook ads, do you know what your cost per lead is, cost per estimate, lead to estimate conversion rate, your sales rate, what objections you're coming across, what your average job size is, what your return on ad spend is, mm-hmm. where your gross profit are, where your gross margin is on each project, and what your like average monthly what your monthly break even is. And if you know these numbers, you can make a lot, and you have them readily accessible, you can make a lot better and more comfortable decisions about your business instead of just like, let's crank it and hope.
Yeah. But also, even if someone doesn't have all those numbers dialed in, if you keep a healthy balance in your bank account for your business, it covers a lot of those sins, right? You can be a little bit more risky. You can take a few more chances with confidence, knowing that even if some of the things don't work out like you hope that they would, the business is not going to fail.
I just say 2 to 3 months runway.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in the subcontractor model, it's even less, right? But I'm really shocked when I talk to some of these guys that are running $3 million companies, and they have like $40,000 in their business checking account. That would stress me out, man. I mean, we just took this morning, my 401k contributions just came out of our business checking, and our business checking dipped to the lowest it's been since maybe the first summer that I launched. So we're down to $160,000 in our business checking account. Well, most companies will never have $160,000 in their business checking account. So we're in a good position because I've understood the value of that. That also allows me, again, take risks. We're behind on our lead gen so far this year. Okay, we just got a proposal for like $80,000 to do a direct mail campaign. Yeah, I can pull the trigger. Even if I spend that 80,000 out of the 160, we still have money in the bank.
Yep. Well, and then you can estimate approximately how many estimates you're going to get and what your sales guys' close rates are.
Yeah.
And you watch it, and if close rate dips for a week or two, you're coming in and you're training the guys and you're problem solving it.
Yeah.
Again,
we track all those KPIs on a weekly basis, obviously.
Yeah. So what would you, I mean, in terms of like closing remarks here, what would you say to someone who is trying to transition from doing everything in their business with, what do they call it? A leader with 100 helpers, right? So every person in your business is a helper, basically an extension of you. They will only go as far as you push them because that's all they can do, right? They're all kind of just order takers, versus getting to that position where you can bring on a leader, someone who can take ownership of projects and run with the ball.
Yeah. I think that self-awareness sometimes in our industry is lacking. You and I have both talked to many, many painting contractors who have goals of getting to $3 million, $5 million, $10 million a year. And they think that they are going to be the ones to lead the charge, lead their company there. Maybe some of them will, maybe. But if you look at the entire industry, how many $5 million a year residential repaint companies are there?
Less than 100, I would guess.
Yeah. And you and I could name off a few, right? Yeah. Most companies are never going to get to the level that Ellison Painting's at right now. I think that my ceiling, like my abilities and my training, my experience is higher than the vast majority of other painting business owners, right? And that's not arrogance. I think if we just objectively look at it, Brad Ellison is really good at sales. He has a lot of experience. He's very strategic, whatever. Even so, I was willing to sell 30% of my company because I knew that I was going to hit my ceiling at some point. Might have been at 5 million, maybe 10 million. I don't know. I didn't want to find out. I would rather bring someone on that would almost guarantee that we get to $5 million in 2024 and $7 million in 2025 and $10 million in 2026, because I knew that I couldn't do it myself. I think one of the biggest problems in our industry is that people look at some of the bigger companies and think I can do that. And maybe they can. I'm not trying to poop on everyone. They probably cannot. And the longer that they hold on to that belief that they can just do it by themselves, that they are the leader that they think they are, the longer that they're going to struggle, and the more it's going to cost them in the long run. And it's going to cost the opportunities for the people working with them too. So I would say first step one is that self-awareness. Like really ask yourself, and maybe more importantly, ask someone that knows you well and you trust whether you're actually the guy to do that. And if you're not, that's okay, because I'm not either. If you're not, then figure out, all right, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the characteristics of a person that would actually help me get it to the next level? And then operate open-handedly with that person. Pay that person a little bit more than you pay that person so much that you'd be shocked that you would ever consider paying someone that much, right? Because if that person is actually able to get you to the level you're trying to get to, you are going to make way more than that in the long run. So self-awareness, and then a little bit more self-introspection to identify strengths and weaknesses. And thirdly, live open-handedly. I thought it would be hard for me to have someone else own 30% of my name, Ellison Painting. It's so easy because Tim's awesome and we have shared vision of values, and he's so skilled and he's locked into the vision of what we're trying to do. And I know that him owning 30% of the business is going to, my 70% is going to be way more value than 100% of something else.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I'd rather have a smaller piece of a bigger pie
Yeah.
than a whole small pie.
Right. And that's not just when it comes to partnerships either, because you can find that leader without giving up any part of your business. But it still comes with all those same things about figuring out what are your strengths and weaknesses, and being humble enough to say, all right, I need someone else to lead my people, or manage my people. Because even if I am a good leader, I might be a bad manager, like Brad Ellison.
Yep. And there's also a couple things come up there. I mean, there's also, it will be easier with more people like that. Like, yeah, you might take a hit short term. This is where time horizons are really important. Might take an income hit for short term. But if you have 2 smart people working towards a goal instead of just one, you're going to get there so much faster, and it's going to be so much easier, more fun.
Oh, it's way more fun to share it with someone.
Yeah. And back to Jason, when his business was, he told me when he was at $1 million, just one business, $1 million, a small business. I know some of you guys listening is like, I can't wait to get my business to $1 million. It's like, this is small business, guys. He hired a visionary and an integrator, and used all of his profit and then some to hire these 2 positions, and fired himself like immediately. And then 4 years later, they're doing $12 million plus a year.
And look at his life now. He doesn't own a majority share of his businesses, but he also doesn't even have to work at them. He does whatever he wants, and he makes more money than he probably ever thought he'd make.
Spend time with his 97 children. Cool. That was a good conversation, man. I had no idea where that was going to go, but I'm glad I'm happy where it went.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell Tim to listen to this, because I don't want him to really get that inflated ego with how many good things I said about him.
How many good things, yeah. Yeah. Last outgoing thought. I told Amanda how much we're gonna offer to pay this position, and she was like, "That is more money than you pay yourself." And I'm like, "It is." And she's like, "Okay, I trust you."
That's good. It's good to have a partner that trusts you.
Yeah. But I mean, made good moves so far. So Brad, thanks for coming on, man. Get you on a 4th time before Nick.
It's always my pleasure, Mike. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.